Are people raised on love more likely to be healthier individuals than people raised on survival? Are they more likely to succeed in life and relationships? It really depends. Someone raised on love might be better off emotionally and be better at communicating, but someone raised on survival might be more disciplined and better at improvising. But you will need all of these skills to be healthy, so it's mostly just a matter of supplementing the skills you failed to gain in childhood, in adulthood. A loving upbringing is a privilege. Sometimes the raised with love and safety is given an opportunity to explore life and succeed. They often are afforded more chances to safely discover and pursue their interests and passions, and have access to a safety net, more easily and unencumbered routes to success, not having to focus on survival. Of course, there are benefits to learning how to function in a dangerous world and gaining the capacity to wend one's way through. Okay? It's a more narrow, specific path. One raised on survival focuses on just that. Those brought up in a traumatic or toxic environment likely have very good instincts out of necessity. Then we can factor in Gabermate's theory about childhood abuse and trauma and effect on physical well-being and lifelong illness, and mental health. Nobody gets out alive in this world, and we all suffer, and have our own traumas and setbacks, but those with a loving, safe start have a leg up. I was raised by unloving parents. It affected all of my relationships. I am just now learning my upbringing affects the way in which I behave. Now my relationships are more healthy, so it's not impossible to love yourself and love others. I was raised to survive, so I think chaotic events tend to not faze me as much. That I was raised on love with a parent who went out of her way to give myself and my sister everything we wanted. But I sit here at 53, completely unsocialized, spending 90% of my time on my own, with literally no friends, and only ever having had one relationship that lasted a month nearly 30 years ago. A former friend of mine who is slightly younger than I am was very much the epitome of being raised on survival, because he was once attacked by his brother and stepfather and kicked out of the house he grew up in, is currently living in a house he owns, and is married with 2 kids. Everyone is different. There are no rules, if you will. That 100% that, because there are no rules to how you're supposed to live. Everybody's lives are different, regardless of upbringing, regardless of what you're going through. Everybody struggles in their own way, you know? What are some things that socially awkward people do? I want to know the things that make people socially awkward or weird. Socially awkward person here. I have difficulty making eye contact, can't make small talk for shit. I always end up making some stupid remark or speaking so quietly the other person can't hear me, struggle to understand other people for some reason when anxious, zone out frequently and end up staring vacantly into space, am overly apologetic, can't make decisions on the spot, so a waiter approaching me when I'm not yet ready is bound to be an awkward interaction. If I show up to a party and everyone is mingling, it is not possible to enter a conversation, so I just wander around the periphery for a few minutes and then give up and leave. I'll make plans to go to a cafe/store/gym. I'll get there and see a crowd and give up and leave. I had a roommate that for whatever reason could never tell when a conversation was over. I'd say something like, "Cool, sounds good," and turn to head into my bedroom, and he'd follow me to keep the conversation going. I'd go so far as to be standing in my bedroom doorway, slowly closing the door, and he'd just keep going. I think I developed a sixth sense for it while I was living with him, and now I always notice it when someone misses a conversation cue. Sitting alone watching TV and eating party snacks while everyone else is talking with each other at a party. I can't do small talk. I have no clue what to do at parties except stand in the corner until I leave. I find parties painful and avoid at all costs. A socially awkward behavior is to fail to recognize that other people are not interested in the thing you are talking about. If you find yourself in a conversation where you're the only one sharing and asking questions, it might mean that the other person isn't interested and you are putting them in the awkward situation of forcing them to be polite. If you choose to share a detail about something important to you, for example, that you enjoy painting, note if the person you're engaging with asks you follow-up questions or shares their own personal anecdote in response. Those are signs that they are interested in engaging in conversation about that topic. If instead they just say, "Oh, cool. Good for you." They're being supportive, but probably aren't hoping that you will now talk to them about your painting every time you see them. That's another big one to learn, always picking up on if somebody is or isn't actually interested in what you're talking about. I still struggle with that, and I feel silly. Pretty privilege is a thing, if you aren't socially awkward. I'm conventionally handsome, and I've been told this many times. "How don't you have girlfriend yet? Someone as handsome as you." Well, for the entirety of my life up until recently, I've been super socially awkward. I admit that my good looks have lent me a handful of experiences with women despite this, but I've rarely been able to pull some on my own. So looks can help, but I guarantee you the most socially adept person can be kinda ugly and pull more than I can ever dream of, at least for now. This is 100% true. I used to work in fashion, and I know this guy who's a model, but socially awkward, even though he's absolutely lovable once you get to know him. Always initially attracted a lot of attention, but people never really clicked with him. I also know a guy in the same circle who's the opposite. Extremely average, to put it nicely, in looks, but very socially adept. He dated a lot of the models we worked with. It's really disheartening when your attractiveness sets expectations for people, so when you go to socialize with them, they are let down by your personality. Happens way too much. Letting someone down by personality just makes me even more miserable. It means I must really suck to be around. Oh yeah, that would make me recede into my house forever and never go outside. Not that I'm like super attractive or anything, but I mean, if somebody didn't like me because of my personality and told it to me in my face, I'd cry and maybe die. My coworker asks if I would like something from the coffee shop every day, and I say no every day. My coworker always asks if I'd like something, and I politely decline, but this morning one of them kinda scrunched her face like a confused WTF and left. I don't know what I did, but am I not supposed to say no? 1. I bring my own tea every morning. 2. I don't like the idea of someone using their own money to get something. I feel like I have to owe you something in return. I understand you were doing it out of the kindness of your heart, but in all honesty, I don't know you well enough to feel comfortable with you doing that. 3. I'm boycotting Starbucks, but there's a coffee bean one more block down. I would more likely say yes to that. Anyways, crazy enough it was my work crush that did this, and now I'm spiraling, but it's okay. I'm okay. I am not okay. I don't know what you did, but I know you fumbled the bag with your crush. If you have a crush on them, why didn't you say, I brought my tea, but I'll walk with you? At work, folks join each other for just the walk to the coffee shop without getting anything themselves at all. If you want an excuse, just say it's a needed break, and you want to stretch your legs anyway. I don't really have any advice for you, but it reminds me of one coworker I had who had to say, that smells good, every single goddamn day I got my lunch out. It was one of the most annoying experiences of my life. That man was bugging for a piece for real. I finally snapped and asked her, are you hungry? Do you need me to bring in food for you? And then politely laughed it off. She quit doing it after that. Well, at least we got somebody who's not socially awkward and / can, deal with confrontation. I also wish I had that ability as well. I am so unconfrontational. What is your 5 to 9 after your 9 to 5? Assuming that the typical workday is 9 to 5 p.m., I know that many people have alternate work schedules. I'm curious what your 5 to 9 p.m. routine that helps you be social, if you want, and generally enjoy life, work tabs, and open personal tabs. It's one of the 3 possible routines depending on how much energy I have. Option 1, gym followed by posting on the internet or disappointment. Option 2, video games for like an hour, followed by posting on the internet or disappointment. Option 3, a nap, followed by disappointment upon waking up. So all in all, there is a hefty amount of disappointment going on in your life, and I'm sorry. Being alone with my thoughts. Oh God, why would you ever want to do that? Production. I create a bunch of songs in my head all the time, but haven't had the chance to actually make them until now. I want to be in my later years in my life knowing I tried everything I ever wanted to try. I have friends who are skilled at it, and it's a challenge talking to them about it knowing I'm in a place of inexperience. I spend my 9 to 5 in a place where I know what I'm doing, so it's a nice change of pace. Community theater! What's in there? A lot of different people who are either passionate about storytelling or being a part of something. I've had a lot of fun hanging around people who also like singing, making weird voices, being weird, and accepting. Are phone calls to friends merely to chat without any agenda still a thing? None of my friends call me anymore. I used to spend an hour talking with my friends about 5 years ago. Now, if I get a call, it's usually because they need a favor. It's just texting now. Is this the case for a lot of people? Something changed in my world. Phone calls are almost anxiety-provoking to me now. I'm 70, talked on the phone about nothing all the time for 50 years. But now, if I get a call from a friend, relative, my own children even, my first thought is, oh God, what happened? Seriously, it's strange. I still want to know if, say, you saw a new bird at the feeder or your clematis bloomed, but that's a text with a photo, not a phone call. Weird, and not good, I think. But I do it too. My grandma, who's in her 70s, always calls me to chat about random stuff like what she cooked today, or how her plants are doing, or the weather. My friends would never call about that sort of thing. I would prefer this type of call, but the phone calls I get are from others who want to complain about people or situations. This is mostly my blood relatives. It's a real downer, besides annoying and anxiety-producing. I either have to muster the energy and courage to end the call quickly or just ignore their call. If it is a real need-a-friend situation, my friends send a text to check in first and give a synopsis. I have one friend who is out of state now that she is the last to actually want to chit-chat about random. People are socially drained nowadays. It's definitely a bigger issue. A man in gym tried to show dominance on me. So I, male 21, have been going into this gym for about 1.5 years, and people are mostly same here. One guy, late 20s or early 30s, who I often see in the gym, tried to show dominance on me. I was laying on the bench press and was about to lift the bar, and this person stand next to the bench and put his hand on the bar. I tap on his hand and told him that please take off your hand, I need to lift the bar. He looked at me, then look away at did not lift his hand. I tap on his hand again and told him again. And he start to stare me and did not took off his hand and did that for continuous 5 to 10 seconds, and I told him again to take off your hand. Then he take off his head and went away, and my assessment from the situation is that he was trying to assess that whether I will show resistance or not so he can abuse me in the future. I wanted to ask what I can do in this situation. Okay, one unrelated thing, please use spell check and maybe some punctuation. That's just unrelated. Next time this happens, go straight to the gym staff and report him. Nothing asserts dominance like getting yourself banned from the gym. Actually, pretty sound advice. That's really the best thing to do in that situation. Guy needs to be banned there, absolutely. Should not be someone fucking around with the bar while people try to bench 100 kg above their neck. Yeah, I mean, the safety concern alone is insane. This person is a walking nightmare for a gym. This isn't about dominance, this is about stupidity. They demonstrated that when it comes to stupidity, they are the king, pope, and god of stupidity. Does anyone feel like they have a slow brain, which makes social situations and public speaking more difficult? I'm 26, male. Fairly introverted with some social anxiety. I've been thinking lately about why I feel socially awkward and therefore nervous a lot of the time when socializing. In many cases, it simply feels like if I knew what to say, I would not feel nervous or awkward. But because my brain doesn't come up with things to say, either because I have a poor working memory or it is simply too slow and not able to think of things on the spot, I feel stuck. It often feels like people around me are able to fluidly share their experiences, thoughts, and feelings, whereas I end up saying things that sound weird, or I end up stumbling on my words because I couldn't think of them or organize my thoughts quickly enough. For example, situations like when telling a story or a joke, I end up sounding really clunky because I can't remember the order of how things should be said. Or the punchline comes to my head before all the build-up, so it loses its impact. My inability to organize my thoughts on the spot has particularly made public speaking and presentations extremely stressful and panic-inducing at work or in casual social situations, as I don't have confidence that my brain will come up with stuff to say. I feel like I have to over-prepare and rely heavily on reading off slides. Just wanted to know if anyone related to this experience, or if anyone has any tips for how to work on this. I've already made one step forward, which is to start attending Toastmasters. Thanks. Female 28. I feel this exactly. I've broken down in tears because I feel that when I try to be social, I legit have nothing to say. It's like I need more time to process, reflect, and only then do I have an opinion/response, but obviously this just doesn't work when you're trying to talk to someone in the moment. I don't have a solution, but you're not alone, which I hope brings you some sort of comfort. It did for me, so thank you. I also have wondered whether it's more of a working memory/executive functioning issue, as I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, inattentive type. Advice: practice broadening what you allow yourself to say. When speaking, try to make it a habit to share anything, even if it seems boring or whatever. I think the problem here for a lot of people is less about having things to say and more about 1. Thinking that what you talk about has to be super interesting to be worth it. 2. Not realizing the experiences that are shareable. If someone asks what you did this weekend, for example, I didn't do anything. I had a long week at work, so I was pretty much just recharging all weekend. I made waffles, LOL. Notice this is much different than, oh, not much, just hung out at home, but we assume that we can't talk about stuff like what we ate, or having a long work week, or that we can't make it interesting. It's all about the attitude that you say things with. If you get a little bit more honest with yourself, you'll realize that you do have things to talk about, and they can be made interesting. I say be honest with yourself because I feel like this ultimately roots down to trying to be something in a conversation. I think it's easier when it's all strangers you never think you'll see again. Regardless, good job, bud. What's a social skill you really believe works but is unpopular? Unpopular can be subjective, so whatever that is unpopular from your perspective works as well. Warmth. I think people perceive bringing warmth to others as being fake because people have trouble bringing themselves to an emotional state where they feel warmth. However, knowing how to do this is very effective at connecting with others, so it's worth learning how to both feel and express warmth. Being a bit unorthodox. Not too much. We tend to subscribe to a bunch of social rules, but I think sometimes a pinch of nonconformity can make one stick out. For example, expressing a different opinion, talking about the weird stuff that you think no one would be interested in. I don't think you have to talk about Taylor Swift or pop culture all the time. Sometimes you can talk about nerdy things and find an audience. Exactly. I think there's being weird, which most people call interesting, and actually just being weird and making people uncomfortable. I was a quirky kid and am only now realizing that I suppressed a lot of my interests growing up because kids and teenagers, to an extent, tend to value conformity. Now, those same quirks can make me the center of attention at any social gathering. Stroking egos. Some might call it manipulative, but with some of the worst kind of people, telling them they're teaching you something or acting as if you're in awe of their talent will get you on their good side instantly. Interrupting. It's actually socially acceptable and an effective conversational tool, but hard to talk about online because it needs nuance and context, and the worst people abuse it. I learned this going to industry trade shows where you walk around and talk to vendors, suppliers at their booths. I would stand there waiting politely for my turn to talk to them while everyone else either talked forever or missed out while more forward people cut in to say hi and get their turns. I had to learn to interrupt politely with timing to get any attention. Not only was it effective, but honestly, it is expected. The vendor was happy to talk and the other person was happy to move on to the next target or oblivious and needed a nudge. A younger example, you're walking down the school hallway and you see your friend, but their back is to you and they are talking to another. It's generally okay to poke your head in and say hi and a quick catch up before moving on. Their conversation can continue as before and you have reinforced your friendship. Outside of some greater drama, nobody in this situation is aggrieved. Or imagine a table at a bar with your peers and one person is dominating the conversation. They are likely waiting for someone to interrupt and counterpoint or whatever because that is how it is at their family's table. It's how they grew up and consider it normal and even appreciate it like fencing or jousting. That is actually a skill a lot of people do need to learn, is learning when to interject, because you don't want to interrupt all the time because then you're just rude. But knowing how to strategically throw yourself into a conversation is a 100% requirement to kind of live as an adult. My neighbor's wife has cancer. So my neighbor is older and so is his wife. They could be my grandparents. I am 23. And apparently the cancer treatment is getting worse instead of better. She is in the hospital and he visits her and comes back home. Today I heard him cry in the corridor. I know that there isn't anything that I can say necessarily that helps, but I wish to be able to say something to not seem apathetic. Is there anything I can say, and is there any way I can help? When my dad was sick with cancer, neighbors dropped off food. That was a really big help for my mom. I'd say start with that. This can be abstractified to solve problems and save time for grieving people. Unexpected sweets are awesome, as well as food. If you know their dietary preferences, gift cards as well. To drive him to the hospital and pick him up, bring him food, do the shopping, take care of the garden, etc. Anything that helps. Maybe just sit and let him talk. Sometimes some just needs to let it all out. Personally, I wouldn't want to give the appearance of pitying your neighbor. Wanting to help is a nice sentiment, but very difficult to do without adding to the mental stress of going through something difficult. If you see them normally during the day, say hi and listen. Have a nice chat. Stuff like that. Just reminding him that there are friendly people nearby who respect his space can go a long way. Why do people say don't become friends with coworkers? I don't understand this. It's already difficult enough to make friends as an adult. The workplace seems like the easiest way to make friends as an adult since you spend so much time there. When you go to work every day and you're around these people all the time, it's natural to build relationships. Having friends at work also makes the job more enjoyable, and it makes the day go by quicker. I can understand not being friends with your boss due to the power imbalance, but I don't see anything wrong with befriending other coworkers. I've heard this, but I don't care. As we get older, it's harder to socialize because of other responsibilities like family, etc. I tend to keep coworkers into a few categories. 1. Actual friends. These are few and the circle is tight. There are people I text and talk to outside of work hours, share personal details with, and if possible, actually hang out outside of work. These are people I've kept in touch with after one or both of us have left the company. 2. Work friends. These are people who I'll be close to while we work together, but once one of us leaves, we'll lose touch. We might share surface-level details about our personal lives, but nothing really deep. Absolutely nothing wrong with that person, but for whatever reason, it doesn't progress much more than that. 3. Coworkers. These are people who I don't talk to unless I happen to run into them. It's mostly just small talk about the weather and work, nothing personal, and then we go about our day separately. Also, I don't actively, consciously try to lump people into these categories. And yeah, over time things change, and the person who was a work friend might turn into an actual friend, and vice versa. If you become actual friends with a coworker, then you really should treasure it, because as you get older, it becomes harder to make new ones.
I've never heard this. However, I try to stay as neutral with coworkers as possible. If you go either direction, you run the risk of making things bad at work because friendships can and do go wrong. I've had people force friendships on me at work, and it did not make a bad job better. This is something that just depends on the person. On top of that, we didn't stay friends after I left the job, which, to me, means you weren't real friends to begin with. And then you end up in the same, it's difficult to make friends as an adult, space as before. In what drama do you live in where friendships go more wrong than just not being friends anymore and not talking? What has to happen between you for a plain friendship to go that south? People can turn on you, maliciously. Best friends sharing personal stuff one day, enemies using the info you shared against you the next. Also make up shit about you. Not pleasant to be stuck at a workplace like that. 'Cause they have the ability to use the information you share against you. In the end, they are not allies, but competitors. Of course, it is hard and awful, more so because you spend so much time there, but anything you say or do can be used against you. I'm 25 and feel like my social skills are that of a 12-year-old. I have extremely debilitating social anxiety. When in social situations with new people or acquaintances, I go into freeze mode and forget every single thing I've ever known or had an opinion on. I have struggled with making and keeping friends my entire life. I thought I would grow out of it, but never did. I don't understand social cues, how to respond or keep a conversation going. My anxiety has prevented me from doing/accomplishing so many things in my life, and it's not to the point where it is now affecting me physically, and I have had to leave my job. I've completely isolated myself. The only person I'm 100% comfortable with is my partner, but I can't ask him to isolate himself in his room all day. It's at a point where it's not fair to him, but he's my best friend and we have been together 5 years. It really bothers him that I can barely keep a relationship with his family, and I really want to get over my fear of being vulnerable or being perceived. Are there classes you can take for this kind of thing? Would anyone on here be willing to help me out or just share some tips that have helped you with bad anxiety?
Oh, well actually I'm gonna just real quick get my notebook out here because I think I might have to take some notes.
Me too. It feels like everyone has graduated college with social skills while you're stuck in kindergarten. People have these deep conversations in 1 minute, then disappear smiling.
IMHO, most others don't have very good social skills either. They've just memorized how to act in certain common situations and fake the rest. So don't knock yourself for not being smooth, and don't think everyone is judging you when you mess up. Because most of us aren't judging you and aren't that smooth ourselves. And screw the ones who are. You looked into working on toxic shame? I resonate with a lot of what you said, and that is what has helped me the most in being more comfortable being myself around people. Heidi Priebe and Patrick Tihan both have great videos on the topic. Heidi is a grad student in psychology, and Patrick is a licensed independent clinical social worker. Tip: if someone compliments you, don't argue with them. You may have low self-esteem, you may want to appear humble, but if someone tells you you have a nice hat, don't say, no, they just wanted to compliment you. Just say thanks. If you really want to appear humble, say something like, you think so? Thanks. You guys are getting compliments? No, just condiments. If you are nice, they will give you an extra packet of ketchup. I do actually get a lot of compliments, a significant amount. I just never reply with thank you. I generally reply with, OMG, shut up, you're lying. I think I need to start just accepting compliments and saying thank you. Like, literally, the girl gave me a compliment and I told her to shut up. No, I'm not. And she gave me another compliment like, oh my god, you're even so humble, I love that. Ugh, I'm an idiot. So true. And as a girl, I found the best way to respond to specific compliments about hair, clothes, makeup, or accessories is to say how you did it or where you got it, specifically if the comment is coming from another girl. Example, I love your dress. It looks so good on you. Oh my god, thanks. It's from blank. Your hair looks great today. Thank you. I tried out these new heatless curls. I can send you the tutorial I used if you want. What's a subtle sign someone is not confident? I've struggled with confidence for a long time, and I've at times been surprised by people pointing out little behaviors reflecting that. So I'm wondering, what are some signs that a person isn't confident? Overcompensating for their insecurities. I really regret doing this when I was younger because it's actually really annoying to the people around you. I used to put myself down before other people could so that it wouldn't hurt as much if someone did say something about me. OMG, I did that too. I told myself I was being brutally honest with myself, but out loud. If I could say how ugly I was in front of other people, then surely they couldn't hurt me. But it has these problems. It did not work. If they insult you or even agree, it's still devastating. It's not really true. It's a subjective matter, and the truth is some minority of people I find hot think I'm hot. It's unhealthy. It only weakened me and fixated me on my flaws. Even if something is janky, only give the power and energy you need to care for it. Don't let it define who you are. I eventually learned this was a horrible strategy, and now I recognize and accept my flaws as they are, but I will not make it a tragedy. If it comes up in conversation, I can make an upbeat joke about it, but I will not shame myself anymore. I learned that I needed to be a friend to myself and stop saying cruel things that I would never say to another friend. You have to act first before you can believe. So I found lots of minor opportunities to silently compliment myself for any positive thing. Okay, actually this one's huge because I struggle with this. I definitely self-deprecate to myself too often. I need to try and shift my mental on that and just generally be nicer to myself. Everybody should try and just be nicer to themselves. I don't know what to do around people who do that because me not offering reassurance is probably taken as, he thinks everything I just said about myself is true. When really, I'm just tired and don't want to entertain it. Complete surrender, total resignation. Too many failures, betrayals. Complete, I cannot change anything, victim mode. Which is total BS, I know. Because I, for one, have a quite intelligent brain and know exactly where that leads to. Downward spiral. More time passes with more stuff undone. More chances squandered. But when you fail and have been failed too often in life, you simply won't try the new stuff and offer. Confidence comes from trying and succeeding repeatedly. Two opposite behavioral ends are big giveaways. Constant bragging and competing, inability to see others succeed, and defensiveness. This unintentionally announces insecurity, and insecurity lives where confidence does not. Constant apologizing, zero boundaries / boundary enforcement, compliment hunting. This one's more obvious, but confidence is required to stand in your statements, needs, beliefs, and opinions under both casual scrutiny and hard pushback. Also, fear of change or challenges, which isn't a singular behavior, but instead a series of decisions and reactions. Confidence is required to change your mind or your habits. It's also needed just to take on new challenges without being, well, traumatized by them. I stopped texting first to my best friend. I haven't heard from him since. We've been friends since we were little kids. I noticed I was the one to always initiate the hangouts. He always agreed, but I remember having a gut feeling that I would never hear from him ever again if I stopped texting first. It's now been 1 month. This could be me on the other end. This is how I've lost so many people I love. I often feel like I'm a burden or don't feel like I have anything worth saying, and then I don't text first. I keep going back and looking at the last text over and over again, and the longer time stretches between now and that text, the more guilt and shame I feel over not responding. At the same time, letting the lack of communication from the other side confirm all my worst fears about that relationship and myself. Don't feel any guilt or shame. If they are your friend, I'm sure they'll be happy to hear from you, whether it's weeks, months, or years. But you'll never know for sure unless you text them. Comments here are harsh. I totally understand that if he really is your best friend, you'd expect him to try and socialize with you too. Because that's what people do who care for each other. I don't think you did something wrong, but now maybe the time has come where you should write him and ask him what you thought. Hey man, it feels like I'm always the one reaching out to you. Is everything cool between us? Something like that maybe. You could be even more truthful and say that you feel like you're the only one trying to keep the friendship going. Wish you luck either way, man.
Just wait. Sometimes not forcing hangouts is good for a friendship. It should be a fun, spontaneous thing, rather than an obligatory hangout every X days to mark it off the checklist.